There's this great bit where he's doing a jig and singing a song at the bar, and it's like, "On the couch on top of the moon," and you hear in the background someone going, "Over the moon." Like, it's so stupid.
And somebody shushes him. Yeah. He's like, "Over the moon."
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Shh."
It's so good. I'll play that for you guys.
But yeah,
it's fun. And the couch on top of the moon. Over the moon.
I think there's something to that. There's got to be a word for it. It's like some Gen Zer or something must have found the word to describe this thing, which is like a random occurrence that happens in, like, whether it's a song or a movie or some pop culture thing that's like so random and doesn't like go with the plot at all, but like it's what sticks out in your brain when you think of this specific thing. Like, do you guys remember the movie? What was it? It was the Plant. No, it wasn't Plan 9. It was Session 9.
Yeah.
Do you remember Session 9?
I have never seen that one.
Oh, do it. It's a good movie.
Okay, so there's a sequence where it's like basically these guys who are
you're talking about.
fixing. Thank you. They're fixing up this old like asylum.
Yeah, in Danvers, Massachusetts.
In Danvers, Massachusetts. And it's like a horror movie because this guy stumbles upon these case files and like recordings for this woman who had like multiple personality disorder. And
it's really good.
It's really good and it's really interesting. But like there is a part, and every time I talk to people who have seen this movie, this is the one thing that stands out to everybody. There's this random part where the guy's like, "Fuck you." And this other dude goes, "No, fuck you." But the way it's shot, it does that Dutch angle and like zooms into his finger, and it's like elongated. So he's like, "No, fuck you." And like, that's the thing that people like, it was like, "Oh, have you seen Session 9? Fuck you." Yeah. Like, that's the thing that
it's one of those movies where there's never like a stylistic choice like that in the whole movie, except for like that one moment.
Yes. It is very jarring.
But the best part is, though, the actor who does that, he's the guy who does all those fucking cheesy one-liners in fucking CSI Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Like, looks like she took a bath. A bloodbath. And then you hear like,
yeah, he does have sunglasses. But this
guy.
was before CSI. Yeah. So it's like, it predates CSI a little bit. Not by much, but a little bit.
I'm going to send the GIF.
Yeah, you guys really do need to see this movie.
It's really good. It's like, for an independent film, I mean, like, you could tell it's like a shoestring budget, but it's so effective, you know? So it's very well written. So, I mean, even when you see the "fuck you" thing, it's a little jarring, but, you know, I feel like the rest of the movie is so good you can forgive it.
I feel like it all should be a part of the like Parthenon of the millennial zeitgeist. You know, there are things that like unite all millennials, and I feel like that should be included. Is this movie?
Yeah,
that's like, this is what makes you a millennial. It's like seeing Donnie Darko in your shitty ex-boyfriend's apartment. You know, it's like. It's like a part of the millennial experience. Yeah.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah. You
know, it's funny you bring that up, because I love whenever movies like Donnie Darko or Sixth Sense come up, because I guarantee you we all have had the experience when we're talking about one of those movies and there's some asshole that goes, "Oh, I figured it out. I know he was dead the whole time.
I am that asshole. I am that asshole. That's me, guys."
I remember when I saw Donnie Darko for the first time and I was like 15. It just had that, like, it was like every cool kid's favorite movie. And I remember, like, at the end, I was like, I think I'm supposed to like this movie a lot. But I
hated it.
I just never did. Like, I was like, okay.
I would have liked the movie if it wasn't for the shitty fucking high school film kids that, like, made it. That were like, "Oh, this is amazing." And I'm like, no.
My favorite part about it is that the director's cut is literally just the director explaining everything in horrible detail, and it just ruins his own movie, and the explanations for everything aren't even interesting. There's like literal visual aids to describe some of the weird shit that goes on.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a
I
weird
need to
choice.
see that. I will sit through that. But I just remember fucking what's her face, Drew Barrymore, cellar door. You know, it's the most beautiful
word or whatever
word in the English language. Cellar door.
No, but I hate when people are like, "Oh, I figured it out." I'm like, "Cool, put that on your resume
I will.
and see who gives a shit."
I will put it on my resume. I figured out Sixth Sense.
Somebody spoiled that for me in elementary school, so.
Oh,
Really?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
wait, elementary school? How old are you?
I'm 33, 2?
He doesn't even know. He's 21.
Didn't Sixth Sense go on in the 90s?
It's like 1999, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I was 10. So maybe in fifth grade, maybe sixth grade. It was early.
Because in my mind, it's like, you know, grade school and middle school just kind of like blend together. And then
I'm pretty sure it was spoiled. I didn't have a locker. I think I was at my cubby. Did anybody have cubbies in elementary school?
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put your like,
kindergarten.
yeah. So
we had the trunk of our teacher's car. That was our cubby.
Wow.
So I think my elementary school had cubbies until fifth grade. So I think I was at my cubby, get him a lunchbox
Okay,
or
so
something.
we're 15 minutes into this
This
episode.
is cold open. This is where the title slams in, and then
What are we talking about?
so I
We're
think
gonna get into comics, right?
yeah, we're gonna
What?
I was thinking it'd be a good idea to have an episode where we talk about how we would introduce people to comics. So if someone's like, I kind of want to get into comics, how each of us would approach that.
Okay, I thought you guys were talking about like reading comics right now because I haven't read like a new title in probably 3 years. So I was like, I cannot contribute
Exactly.
to
So
this
what better
conversation
time
at
than
all.
now to do this topic?
Now is the time.
So all of my talking points will be very dated.
I think
That's
all of
cool.
ours. I mean, well,
Oh my
I feel
God,
this topic is timeless anyway.
Yeah, it's
There's
good. It's
not a
good
comic
safety.
that's come out in the past 5 years I'd probably put on
Well,
a
there
list
isn't
of
a
things. so.
TV show that's come out in the past 5 years that wasn't based off of a comic. I'm still fucking surprised they haven't tried Attempted Saga yet.
Didn't have the budget.
Somebody does. HBO does. If they're making fucking Euphoria with like fucking teenagers having orgies before like math, then
20
yeah.
prosthetic penises. Got the budget
I
for that.
have no desire to watch that.
I haven't sit through an episode. I have not.
I have seen all of the
I
episodes.
heard season 1's really good and season 2's terrible. Is what I heard from people.
I hear the end of season 2
Season
is
2's different.
awesome. I don't know.
There's a lot of like jaw-dropping moments in season
What's
2.
the
so I
blonde
can't say
chick's
it's
name?
bad.
Celia or something?
There's Cassie and there's Jules,
Cassie.
who's also blonde.
Everybody loves
Yeah.
Cassie. I saw a video of a
And,
girl doing her 4 a.m. skincare routine, and I was like, okay,
Yeah, that was mental. That was really mental.
that's crazy.
I heard they
In
were dead the
universe,
whole
she was
time.
having a mental breakdown. That's why she was doing that. But,
Oh, that's horrid.
yeah,
What the fuck?
yeah,
What
it's a
the
lot
fuck?
of.
Remember when we were in high school? And we were just
Can we please
derps?
do our fucking homework?
We were just
Reading comic
derpy.
books.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're like this is how I like would try to hit on the guy at school that I really liked, but I was too chicken shit to actually ask out. It's like, hey, John, I had a dream about you last night. Want me to give
wow.
you a tarot reading? Okay, no, it's cool. It's cool. I'm busy anyway. Okay, bye.
Wait, that's how you asked me out.
Oh.
It worked out.
It did work out.
Yeah.
And it was a good tarot reading.
It was a tarot reading. It's like somebody likes you. They're very, very close to you.
But you're
It's
just
a-
not picking up the hints.
Yeah, you see this hangman upside down. That means you a dumb motherfucker who ain't picking up cues.
When I'm throwing down.
Yeah, because all the blood's rushing to your head. But yeah, comic books.
Okay.
How do they work?
Who would play her?
Who would play her?
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember, when I would volunteer at Comicopia, people would be asking that question. I think my favorite request was somebody saying, Yeah, I want to read something that's an accurate depiction of the future.
What?
Yeah.
That's a
I will-
Comicopia experience.
I will never forget
that's
that.
good.
I remember like looking him dead in the eye and being like, and repeating it back. A comic that's an accurate depiction of the future. Like, yeah, like 100 years from now.
Surrogates.
Paul the Oracle.
Yeah, Captain America, Winter Soldier. That's gonna be accurate.
You remember when Surrogates was like the thing?
Briefly.
Everybody loved Surrogates.
Yeah, I do remember that. I just remember I remember that being a thing, and I remember there being like a huge zombie comics craze. Because I remember Walking Dead came out, and then there's a bunch of other zombie shit that came out.
Everything was zombies.
Marvel
everything was
fucking had
zombies.
zombies.
Yeah, Marvel zombies.
Also
Pride,
written by Robert
Prejudice,
Kirkman.
and zombies.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, I think step number one just has to be, what are you into? Or what do you want to get into?
Exactly. I feel this because there's such a spectrum. There's the people that are like, I want to get into superhero comics, and there's the people that are like, comics are cool, but I don't want to read that superhero stuff.
Yeah,
Or there's-
I always I mean, I don't know. I think Chandler can really speak to this because I think we both had very similar selling tactics at Comicopia where you just kind of more so try to figure out what their interests are and go from there. Because some people would obviously say like, oh, I don't really want to read the superhero stuff, but for a fact there's a superhero title that they'd fucking love.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think that's fair, Chandler?
Totally. Well, I will say, like, when I first started working at Comicopia, you and Maggie like gave me like a stack of books as homework with like different diverse genres and different storytelling, and so like that really helped me kind of like be able to recommend things because like I think I come at it from the perspective of like there's something for everyone, and there's like such a diversity of genre in the past like decade than like the past 30 years that there really is something for everyone. So yeah, I just try to, like you said, figure out what they're interested in. Usually I ask like, what's your favorite show? What's your favorite book? What's your favorite movie? Then I'll try to think of like the genres that are kind of like similar, and then just pick from there.
That's cool. Yeah.
No, I agree.
There's definitely different genres of comics that I feel like that there's like there's your, it's almost okay, this might be a stretch, but whatever. I feel like sometimes comics is kind of like music, or at least my relationship with, because there is like your mainstream pop, and then you have like your grunge alternative, that like
That's accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like there was always somebody that was like, you could typecast somebody, when they walk in the store, what they're wearing. You could kind of get a gist of what they would be into.
Like I always thought about comics like it was lipstick. Because I mean for people who are into like makeup, lipstick is one of those things that's very, very personal, and that what works for somebody won't necessarily work for you, but everybody wants to rock a bold red and like wants to do that, but like not everybody can. We all try, and we all have to have like a safe space to try, but sometimes you'll put it on and you're like, oh, I look like 13 and this is kind of creepy. And then some people put it on and they're like, oh wow, I look like my Nana. This is terrible. And some people put it on and they're like, oh, this is my look. Like this is me now, So I feel like comics are just so many different, because it's not like novels. It's not like novels where you are attaching your like imagination and the images that you're producing with your imagination to the text. Comics actually give you and present you a very obvious like palette to work off of.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is your imagination is piecing together just the in-betweens of the frames instead of the entire portrait.
Right.
So you're already given kind of like, it's like paint by numbers for your imagination.
Yeah.
And I think that it's important for people to be safe and feel safe to explore like titles like the superhero titles and stuff, but it's not for everyone. And you will easily, especially with like manga and stuff, you will come in contact with people who are like hardcore just like gatekeepers, and they'll completely turn you off to the entire experience. So I think it's more about just like I think it's more about kind of cultivating a safe space for you to enjoy these things in,
Right.
Versus like I don't know, like exploring like those communities and stuff, and
yeah, I guess for me
exposing yourself to that kind of
I kind of
drama.
that makes sense. I mean, again, kind of going back to the music angle, kind of thinking about like,
it's
like
the same, I think.
yeah,
Very
or
similar.
depending on, like, or if somebody's kind of dipped their toe, like, okay, who do you like, like, and going off of like music, like let's just say hypothetically, right, I'm talking to somebody who's like, oh, like, like if you're into Foo Fighters, like you should check out Led Zeppelin, like check out the Beatles, like, kind of get like listen to the stuff that inspired them, and then kind of going back. I feel like there's you can do that with comics too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But you also come in contact with those people that like just list all these indie bands and then look at you like you've grown a third head because you don't know who the fuck they're talking about. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't identify your cousin's band.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they only played one show in Cambridge back in 2007. I'm so sorry. I guess I'm just not cool,
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there are comics like that, where it's
really
it's like
are.
a fucking pamphlet, and it's like, oh, well, I haven't sold out. I'm like, yeah, because you haven't sold it.
It's like,
Any issues.
or when people
any
are like, oh,
copies.
you haven't read this? How do you call yourself like
Oh, yeah, it's
a
like, you haven't
shoujo
read
fan?
Watchmen?
It's like, eat a dick.
Oh man, I used to. I remember people
Sorry.
used to say, like, to tell people to read Watchmen. Like, people who weren't into comic books, like, oh, you have to read Watchmen. But then I'm just like, first off,
That's the worst thing to read
So,
if you're not into comics.
Watchmen's great if you're deeply into comics, since it's a deconstruction of
If
that.
you want to, if somebody's not into comics and you want to ensure that they never get into comics,
Yeah, give them some Alan Moore stuff.
Watchmen.
Dude, my dad...
And then show them the movie.
My dad read Watchmen. My dad read Watchmen and Preacher.
When it came out or recently?
Yikes.
No. Like, I mean, I want to say
Read
maybe...
your copies.
Yeah, he read my copies because... Well, the funny thing was that I left a copy of Preacher in the bathroom, and I lost it. And I didn't realize that, like, one day my dad came in to take a shit, and he saw, like, Preacher, and he was like, all right, I'm going to start reading this. And then one day he was like, hey, I read your Preacher book. And I'm like, my Preacher book? Like, what the... This is like... I haven't seen this trade in months. So when he says Preacher book, I'm thinking, like... Is it like a book of prayers or hymn? Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, Preacher book? He was like, yeah, it was fucked up. And then I was like, oh, oh, yeah. What? And because I lost it, I never finished it. So I thought it was kind of funny that I lived in a world where my dad read a comic book that I didn't. So then I started sneaking in comics into the bathroom, just to like leave him there and see if he'd pick them up. And that's how he read Watchmen. And I was like, I read that Watchmen book. I was like, what'd you think? What the fuck with the pirate?
Yeah, seriously.
Like,
Like,
accurate.
Watchmen
like,
is
I mean,
like a beautiful and smart
guy
book,
can-
but oh my god,
yeah.
there's so
This guy
much
can
text
fucking
and
piece
so much
himself
extra
together,
stuff.
but he can't. Yeah, my dad was like, this guy can rebuild himself atom by atom, but can't fucking make a pair of pants.
Yeah.
Preacher, though,
Yeah.
depending on the person, could be a good just like entryway. If the person's just like, you think they're into some weird fucked up stuff.
Do you like Nine Inch
Like-
Nails?
Sure. if like, especially if they're younger and they're like into
A
like,
lot of people like 9 Inch Nails. That's not a criteria.
but I think something
Okay,
like,
Based off of the 4 people I knew growing up who like Nine Inch Nails loved Preacher.
Okay, so who did that? Ellis?
yeah,
Or Ennis?
Ennis.
Garth
Ennis.
Ennis. Garth Ennis. Garth
It's
Ennis.
Trent Reznor.
It was not. Don't affiliate Trent Reznor with that man. So Garth Ennis is amazing, I think, in terms of his war stories. I thought
Yeah,
those
his
were
war
so...
comics are the best.
If you're really interested in history, like, he's somebody you definitely want to dive into because he does not shy away from the gritty details. Unfortunately, everything outside of the realm of nonfiction for him is just psychotic and it's grotesque and it's like, oh, you should be in jail.
I think some of his
And
stuff
anybody
is truly
like
terrible.
I
but
would totally judged people off of like Crossed.
Yeah,
When I saw
Crossed
people
is-
like
God.
when I saw people picking up Crossed, I was like, oh, okay. I do not want to be alone with you.
Dude.
Yep.
That
Yeah.
is upsetting.
But I liked his Punisher.
Punisher Max is a great Punisher comic, I think.
I mean, but like you could see, I feel like, especially like Welcome Back Frank. I loved Welcome Back Frank. That was the first Punisher arc I read.
I didn't
But-
get into that. I didn't see that until after The Boys, and by that point I was like,
Well,
I'm on to you.
Well, I was gonna say,
Ennis.
I recently reread Welcome Back Frank, and you can see like the beginnings of.
I'm like, man, you
The
have like a
Boys and, like-
serious torture porn, like hard on for torture porn. Like
Yeah.
I
remember
can't.
flipping through a trade of Cross. Like, oh, what's this? I got nauseated.
Yeah.
It was like there's like
Oh, the pregnant 12-year-old didn't like fucking
no,
throw
it
you
was the
off?
clown.
God.
It was the clown who had survived the apocalypse, and he was like a psychopath amongst. Like he wasn't infected, but he was able to survive because he was a psychopath. And it was like some of the fucking clown rape fantasies he had. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back to Spider-Man where it's safe.
Yeah, I don't think Crossed should be on anybody's get you into comics list.
Hell no.
And if it is,
Well.
get out.
Yeah, funny story. When I was at Comicopia, some guy walked in asking for like a horror comic recommendation. So I recommended all these really beautiful, like, Beasts of Burden, gorgeous watercolors, Joe Hill's Lock and Key,
Oh yeah.
like really good, really solid horror comics. And I made the mistake of saying, oh yeah, and then there's like this thing called Crossed, where like there's like this virus and everyone starts killing everybody, and it's kind of like torture porny. Then he goes, torture porn? Then
and
he
then
only
he
buys Crossed.
and then
He
he
only buys
jizzed
Crossed
everywhere.
I was like,
That's when getting people into comics goes wrong.
I mean, honestly,
Why?
if that is what keeps him from like pursuing the like, darknet shit, cool. But like I don't know. I worry about people. Like, and I think I think it's fair to kind of have these judgments like a little bit. Like there's certain things
If
that's
you
like,
like this,
well, there's certain
you
things
might be a redneck.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's one thing. It's like, oh, if you like this, you might be a redneck, or if you like this, you grew up poor. It's like, okay, you and everybody else. But if you like this, you might be a pedophile. It's like, that's something I kind of want to pay attention to because
Yeah.
I'm like,
Flag.
that's not okay.
No, I totally get that. I think Rob, I think this is actually something that you and I bonded over. Like, was that like, talking about like, oh, like somebody likes Captain America. If that's their favorite hero, like they can't be that bad.
Yeah, that's
Or like see,
that's what I'd like to think.
yeah.
But like, yeah, some like I think, or I was talking
We're
about
talking
like
pre-Avengers film franchise.
yeah, just like raising my child on reading comic books and like using, instead of being like, Jesus Christ is our savior, do as Jesus did, be like, Steve Rogers is a good ass guy.
yeah.
Or like,
I
Do it
love
all
how he
day.
went Southern with Jesus and then went New Englander with Steve Rogers.
fucking Steve Rogers, dude. But no, like, yeah, I
Fucking
think
wicked patriotic.
I think if I was trying to get a child into comics, I would go to Captain America or Superman. Specifically Superman, because I feel like DC does a better job at making all ages comics. Like, does Marvel? I know they have some, but I feel like
They didn't start until like recently. Like Runaways is probably like the last like.
Runaways, I think, is the last and only.
and Runaways was more like
well-
a like YA, I guess,
Yeah.
which is
No,
They
man,
have like they do have like a young readers line, but it's like so divorced from like the main continuity.
yeah, because I feel like
Yeah.
when I got
Yeah, that's a good point.
well, there's also the problem that when like we got into comic books were still kind of geared towards like teenagers and stuff, but then they just aged with us.
Yeah.
So I was actually thinking I was gonna say if somebody
sorry,
wanted to
you
get into superhero comics like at a young age, my recommendation would be to start older in like 80s and 90s stuff, like read some Chris Claremont X-Men stuff, and then because
I
that
think even going back further, like because I having read, so I told you I have completed my quest of reading every issue of Uncanny X-Men. That has happened. So I'm reading all the Spider-Man stuff, and I think honestly, even reading the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby stuff is great. Because the way it's written, it's very like geared towards kids. Like it's very straightforward. The dialogue is straightforward again, and they're explaining everything to you, so there's no misinterpretation. That would be kind of cool, because then you're getting them on the character. You're getting them to familiarize Kirby, Steve Ditko, Stan Lee, and kind of knowing the origin stories. And it's not hard to read.
Yeah,
you know
that
I mean?
actually
Like,
makes sense, especially for like a young kid, like
Yeah.
5 to 7 or something. I think that 60 stuff is, because again, it was literally written for children. So I mean, that's
right. Like if I wish I could go back in time and give myself those issues when I was like in 1st or 2nd grade, because those would have been perfect for me. Because it's like, you know, like when you're just learning to read, you know, like the vocabulary.
I was not allowed to touch my dad's comics when I was that young.
Well, he's got the issues.
Well, yeah, and but it was like kind of one of those things, because my dad worked nights. He was in radio, and I remember when I would get up to go to school, if I woke up early enough.
You gotta share that picture, by the way.
I will. When I woke up early enough, though, the house would be completely quiet, and my sisters haven't gotten up yet to go to school or anything like that. I'd be the first one up, and the reason why I liked to get up early was because I would sneak downstairs and turn on the TV and like be able to kind of get in some like of my own programming, because when you have all older siblings, you do not get the remote ever. So I would sneak downstairs, and it would be like 4:30, almost going on 5 in the morning, and my dad would be at the kitchen table, and he would have his like, it wasn't really quite a breakfast, but it was kind of his like meal before going to bed, because he would like sleep through the morning because he had been working all night. And he would just be by himself, and he would like very gingerly just be flipping through his comics. And I remember watching him, and like he would always wipe his hands before turning the page, and like everything was like in like a plastic bag. Like I just remember being like, oh my God. And like I remember asking him like, what are you reading? He's like, don't worry about it. You know, don't worry about it. And when I turned, I want to say it was like 11, he came up from the basement with this big long box of, it was Peter David's Supergirl and Wonder Woman. And he said, have fun. And that was like, oh my God. Like I was like, this is I felt like I was crossing the threshold into something like into like adulthood, because I got to like read these comics, and they were pretty basic like storylines, which were great for like, I think, preteens. But yeah, that was like the idea of handling a comic book at like 5 or 6 would just be like, at that, do I want to die? Like
yeah, I guess I'm thinking more of those, you know how like they have those really cheap like Marvel Essentials where it's like black and white, you know, like those trades, you know, you get for like $10-15.
See, we had the like, there was the comic strip collections, like Foxtrot and Garfield, and you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Am I that old? Are we that old?
No.
Yeah.
I still have comics. They have comics and newspapers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those like those I got to read because they were just like, you know, whatever. But Daredevil, oh my God, that was something for like you had to be like an adult.
Yeah, I remember recommending somebody I knew wanted to get into Daredevil, and I remember, I think Brubaker was writing at the time, and I said, well, if you really want to get into it now, you should read the Kevin Smith Guardian Devil, because then that goes into the Brian Michael Bendis run, which goes into Brubaker, and I remember she hated the
There's
Guardian
a lot
Devil.
of words in that. Kevin Smith
It's a lot of words, but that actually wasn't
what.
what turned her off. It's like, he's kind of misogynistic. I'm like,
Oops.
you're probably not gonna like Daredevil. Like, you're just probably like not gonna. Which I don't know. I still don't even kind of think of Daredevil that way. But it's been a while since I've revisited that. But if you mean like, you know.
I think that would be a good homework assignment, actually, for all of us to kind of go back and pick up those titles that were, like, super enriching for us. Like,
Oh, no.
when we were in high school, and then we could go, what the fuck? Like, because you know it's going to be sexist.
I reread
and
Ultimates recently,
jokes.
and I still think Ultimates is pretty good. Ultimates is on my list of Ultimates. Ultimate Spider-Man are all my list of like if somebody wants to get into superhero books, like read the first trade of Ultimate
X-Men.
Spider-Man, Ultimate
I loved
X-Men.
Ultimate X-Men in high school. I
Ultimate
read the
X-Men was
shit out
fucking
of
dope.
Ultimate
I think all
X-Men.
three like the first wave of the Ultimate books, I think is like
Fantastic.
some of the stylistic choices for X-Men specifically, very early 2000s.
It got weird. Yeah, it did.
No, but you know what though? I loved Ultimate. I love the Ultimates because it was kind of like Nolan before Nolan in the sense of like how can we make this kind of real world grounded, you know? And I love that they had an explanation for everything. Like the suits the X-Men wore was to hide from the Sentinels. Like that was why they had like the skin tight. So it's like, oh cool, it was very well thought out. Like I loved that the Hulk became the Hulk because he was trying to replicate the super soldier serum. And then when he failed, Norman Osborn got the contract, so when he would turn into the Green Goblin, it was a culmination of the super soldier serum and the Hulk formula, hence why he was big and green. Like, it was really cool. It was, like, streamlined. You know, I thought that was pretty...
Yeah, and if they get into the Ultimate Universe, they can learn how comic book continuity becomes nonsense and eventually will break your heart.
Ultimate.
Yeah.
Well, and I think if we're thinking about if it's one thing to like introduce like a fellow adult into a comic book series because that's like really fucking easy, but for a child,
I think a young child's hard. When I was thinking of this topic, I was thinking more just like a preteen, like somebody who can read something more mature,
honestly,
but they don't have any entry point.
I always felt that the American stuff is just gonna be like 20 steps behind when you come into terms with like manga, because they have been like the idea that comic books in America were like kind of for everybody, and then you hit the 1950s and 60s when parents were just like, this is terrible for your children, and everybody adults don't read comics, blah.
The comics code
and their comics code and all that shit. But like, imagine if that didn't happen, how interesting and amazing the content would be. And that's what you get in Japan. And so there's so many more options, I think, for children in Japan and like in young adults in Japan that and women and men
Manga's
and like
got some
everybody.
wholesome ass shit.
They got some of the most wholesome stuff, but things that like kids will totally get into because they have the actual demographic and the statistics there to tell them what children are interested in. Unlike here where Marvel and DC are just not gonna, they don't, that pool doesn't really exist right now.
It's true.
And hasn't for a really long time. I don't know. But then again, that I'm talking about the industry like as I knew it like over 5 years ago. So
yeah. I think Disney, now that they've bought Marvel, I think Disney is kind of from what I can see, Disney's making more of an effort for putting out materials that are geared towards kids.
I mean, I don't know if they come out like comic content, then yeah,
they've come out with a lot of
but...
like children's books. Like I have a bunch for Max, like random that are geared towards like toddlers and young kids and stuff, which again gets them into the characters at an early age. And there's definitely more of an emphasis on those characters, like children's programming on Disney Plus and stuff like that. But the like form of comic books, I mean, I haven't perused a comic book shop's all ages shelf in a while, so I don't know what's...
Well, I mean, when I did, I remember when I was 9, so we had Mile High Comics out here, and when my dad would bring me with him, it was like kind of a fucking honor. And they're all ages like shelf, because it was literally like one thing.
There's always just a shelf.
They would have like a Disney or Looney Tunes, something like that. And those things I just was not into because I was like, okay, you're obviously talking down to me. And kids are really good at like seeing that and being like, oh, are adults talking down to me? And they hate that. If they feel like they're being talked down to.
That's how you talk to kids. Everyone's like, how do you talk to kids? When you just talk to them like they're an adult.
Talk to them like they're an adult and they will respond as such. But when you're talking down to them, they're gonna think you're bullshit.
The baby went to sleep.
Yeah, they're gonna be like,
I'm 13.
You. Yeah, like, and so I never was really interested in those things. But I remember Sailor Moon. And when Sailor Moon, the comics came out, like, I was just like, oh my God, this is speaking my language because it's speaking to me.
Yeah. I do think there is, speaking of Sailor Moon, there's definitely, at least in the past 15 years, there's definitely more good licensed comics that are coming out. Like last year, I got obsessed with Boom's Power Rangers comic books.
Oh, yeah?
I read like 80 issues of them just every night. I was just crushing Power Rangers. And I was into Power Rangers, but from like 1993 to 97. Like when I was young, like I didn't bring that Power Rangers. Like I stopped watching Power Rangers in the 90s, but I just randomly started reading this comic and I was like, holy shit. Well, the comic made me want to watch Power Rangers again because the comics are so good. So like that's another thing. Like if somebody's into something already, be like, hey, you should check out the comic. It's cool, and comics as a medium can do things nothing else can, because it's literally just like, do you know it'd be crazy if this nonsense happened, and they just draw it and it's there.
Boom was doing really well when I was like inching out of the industry, so I assume that they must be rocking it now. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you could have a license for everything because there's an audience for everything. Like, if because I know, like, they're, like, we're talking old fucking comics that, like, our grandparents read. Like, Lee Falk's The Phantom. Or, like, Doc Savage, The Shadow, Like, I mean, I know for a while there, they were bringing those comics back, and... and why not? I mean, like Rob said, you don't really need a Hollywood budget for it.
I don't know, Chandler. What do you think? I feel like you're more into what the kids are doing.
Me? What's the question?
I don't know.
What Paul's saying, they are like rebooting a lot of like older titles and stuff for the new audiences. I know when I was working at Comicopia, like they rebooted the Valiant universe, and that was like big in the 90s, and like I knew nothing about it, but I'm like, this is actually pretty damn cool. I want to learn more.
Yeah, let's read some Manowar.
Yeah, and like even with like the Ultimate like Marvel and stuff, like that made me like go on Wikipedia and like research all of like the mainline stuff. So I'm like, I learned more about it that way, and that kind of helped me inform me when I'm like looking at issues or buying new issues for new series and stuff, because like I know about these characters like in terms of like background and stuff. So
I may just turn this off in my brain now when I read comic books. Do the comic books still do the like issue 61 of Amazing Spider-Man in like the small corner?
Sometimes.
I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes for a while.
I feel like that was way more prevalent back in the 80s and 90s.
It was.
Because that for me was like literally, like as somebody who would go and buy a comic because the cover looked cool, would read the middle of I have no idea what's going on, and then it's just like, see Spectacular Spider-Man 117, and then like write a note with a crayon and be like, I gotta look for this one.
No, it's true, because, again, when I was going through Uncanny X-Men, like, 70s, 80s, 90s, it'd be cool to say, like, oh, like, see this, because, because they would reference something that happened outside of X-Men, like, see, issue 13 of Ghost Rider, or whatever, and then at one point in the 2000s, it, like, stopped, and then I'd have to, like... stop and be like, what? And then I have to go on Google.
That's the thing now. Like
they're referencing, and it's like, fuck, I don't want to do that much homework. Just fucking, just tell me where I can find this side story. Don't make me, like, listen, I don't want to be in a fucking true crime podcast trying to figure out what the fuck Wolverine's talking about.
Yeah, I guess
like, just fucking tell me the issue. Don't.
That was part of the fun for me getting into comic books, was just like trying to piece together that puzzle, and then eventually you have the full run and you can be like, okay, now it makes sense.
Well, and it was great too, because it also got you to read something that you probably didn't know you wanted to read, like, say, something like Ghost Rider or like Silver Surfer, where like you read that, you're like, it was a great way to kind of cross promote, yeah, because you look at some of the team ups and it's like, why in the fuck are they teaming up, know? But because again, it was trying to do that cross promotion, as the kids say.
I did see a lot of the look at issue blank in terms of like the event comics in Marvel. They do that a lot more often, where it's like stuff leading up to the event. They'll like reference the individual titles. That's
true, and they would even release like a trade, like Road to Siege, like Road to Secret Invasion, Road to Road,
Road to the Road.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, no, and that was a great thing about Marvel, because when I would have friends who like, hey, like I want to get into Marvel, I'm like, oh, dude, now's a good time because this event just ended, because events were kind of like not like a reboot, but like you could jump on after an event and really not have to know too much about what happened before.
Yeah, because the status quo was kind of wiped
It was
clean
always-
always, but
Yeah, like it was just like I remember it being like all the time. Like I remember like after Secret Invasion, like Civil War, like all you need to know is this. And I remember loving that about Marvel and DC. That shit drove me crazy because I wanted to read DC and I could never find like a through line to like get into it. It was always like I'd pick up an issue and it's like it is so bogged down in the continuity that like I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't know what Batman's talking about because I didn't read this Crisis and I didn't read this issue of Superman. I don't understand this fucking reference from whatever. You know, like I think that's kind of why I always kind of tend to lean towards Marvel because Marvel I just had an easier time getting into.
I do think DC,
what they were selling.
The good thing about DC is that there is a lot of self-contained stories within DC that you can hand people, especially with Batman. I mean, there's like 50 Batman just like story arcs that are self-contained you could give to people.
Yeah, I just think of like DC as like an anthology universe. Everything is just kind of like.
Well, you know what benefits DC too is Elseworlds. You know, you the self-contained Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One. You know, like what if Batman fought Jack the Ripper? Like you kind of have these self-contained, not a lot of consequence.
Even things just like Long Halloween or
like it was just. I remember somebody telling me that they're like, oh well, Marvel doesn't have that. I'm like, actually, Marvel does. It's just like full runs. Like when you look at like Chris Claremont's X-Men, I feel like that's just as good as one of those like one-off trades that DC has. It's just you just got to put it.
And they definitely go longer because if you think of something like a Marvel concise package or like Hawkeye, like Matt Fraction's Hawkeye run, like that is a concise thing. But that went on for like into the teens, if not 20 issues or so. I think. So that's like a multiple trade worth of.
Yeah, it was a decent run, but I get what you're saying, and I feel like I'm slowly gonna like be turning into like the Simpsons comic book guy. Be like, no, you have to read this whole arc, but now that I've read like whole chunks of like early X-Men and Spider-Man, it's like I get it. Like when I think after like the first 60 issues of Spider-Man, it made me really fucking appreciate the Sam Raimi Spider-Man. Because it was like he got the high point of those 60 issues in one fucking movie. Like it was like I couldn't believe how well adapted it was. Like how much, how much fat they chewed, and in doing so, just kind of keeping,
I didn't know it was an adaptation. I thought it was like an original thing. It's pretty cool. Don't fight me, please.
But yeah.
But yeah, another thing I was thinking of, just like random good things to suggest to somebody who just wants to read random comic books that are good, that are also small and self-contained. Remember like 5 years ago, Mark Millar was just spitting out these like 4-issue miniseries? Most of those were freaking good. Like,
and 4 issues.
Like
not a big
Chrononauts, the weird time travel thing.
That was fun.
It was like 4 issues long. It's complete chaos as far as like the story, but it's a simple story, but it's just like at the end there's just like spaceships and dinosaurs and all this crazy shit, so you can actually see like the benefits of comic books, where it's just like these crazy ass ideas can come to the screen. And then Huck was another short one that I really liked.
I liked what was Scott Snyder did with the same artist who did Chrononauts. I'm blanking on his name.
The Wake.
Yeah,
with the
I fucking love The Wake.
That's pretty cool.
The Wake was really good. There's so many, especially I feel like in the past 15 years, once Image left the like the founding fathers fake superhero junk behind and went kind of more into the creator-owned stuff. Like, there's so many. I mean, there's so many Image books at this point. There's a bunch of crap, but there's also a bunch of gold in there.
Oh, dude, look at Ed Brubaker, like Incognito, Criminal.
Yeah, anybody who's into just like crime stories, just be like, hey, Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips have you covered forever.
Pretty much.
That's a portfolio.
I mean, exactly.
Yeah. No, I mean
then Vertigo, when Vertigo is at its like peak, I feel like it's like, oh, you're a book nerd who likes fantasy. You should read. Wow, my brain just turned off. Fables.
It's like, oh, you're really into literature?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You need to pick up Sandman.
Oh,
or
man,
like
Sandman.
Scalped. It's like
Yeah, 100 Bullets.
a lot of good stuff. Good stuff.
times.
I remember Fables. I really, really, really enjoyed Fables, and then I heard a rumor through the grapevine that it was like an Israeli-Palestinian allegory, and I was like, oh, man.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, it makes you rethink the whole thing now, doesn't it?
Mhm.
But at the time when I loved it, yeah, being like the farm being Palestine.
Wow.
I never
Yeah.
finished Fables. I read the first like 11
fucked up.
trades of it.
Yeah.
Not nice. It's not cool. And like when you think of it in those terms, you're like, oh, really, man?
That
God, that's
sours it a bit.
not cool at all. But anyway, before knowing that, I remember I was so into Fables, and I went on a road trip with my dad to South Dakota, and we were going up to like the Crazy Horse Monument, and doing that whole like hike and stuff to see it. But I remember whenever we would like stop and like stay at the hotel, there was no like hanging out. It was just reading Fables. It was great. It was so great.
I actually think my first like 5 trades of Fables I gave to somebody because my friend was like, he's like, hey, my wife wants to get into comics. What should I let her read? And I was just like, here's a stack of stuff, and like the first like 3 trades of Fables was in there, and like,
And I hate that like Once Upon a Time, like that show, I feel like was so I guess they were trying to make a Fables run, and it just wasn't like vibing, and it wasn't clicking, and so they just turned and did Once Upon a Time, and it's like everyone's like, oh, so it's like Once Upon a Time. It's like, no, it's not.
yeah, I remember when
It's
seeing
like
Once Upon a
Fables.
Time was
No.
coming out, I was like, oh, it's like a shitty.
That is not like it. That is not
Fables
like
thing,
it.
ugh.
That is, you can't even call it a poor man's Fables, because it's like nothing like Fables is so much more like rich.
Yeah, oh, man.
And I mean, I still
read Fables
I do.
so
I still
long
love that
ago.
story, but
that like I haven't thought about it in so long, but just like thinking back of like when you first hear of like who the what do they call him, the big bad in the adversary is, and you're just like, oh shit, that's crazy. And then just like
It makes perfect sense.
and it took so long for us to like figure out who the
it was like
adversary
60
and once we
issues
did,
or
we were
something. It was like,
yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
and just like how there's a lot of, it's just like a noir for a bunch of it, which is
Yeah.
awesome. And yeah,
Like the spy mission with Briar Rose. They're trying to make
It's
a heist.
fucking, it's
was awesome.
Snow White and the Big Bad Wolf, like solving mysteries.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome. It's so cool. And like, oh God, it's so good.
Yeah. And then.
Yeah.
I got nothing. I got nothing to say about Fables. I started reading Fables and then
You fell off.
I fell off.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's
I
okay.
hope we're not giving you
I'm
spoilers.
gonna look at my,
No,
my
it's
shelf
okay.
next to me and see if there's any good hot picks.
We have the whole Fables collection and
Yeah.
the fancy bookmarks, but
Ew.
that's something I need to reread. I will reread it.
Fables?
Yeah.
Cool.
With your new historical
I have the Cinderella
lens.
trade, the like spin-off of Secret Agent Cinderella.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
That was a good run.
Cinderella was such a great character. So was Sleeping Beauty. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that Prince Charming was like the just the one guy for all of them. And they had like a like kind of a club for just like a support group
Ex-wives
for
clubs.
people had to like deal with Prince Charming. Because he was like the same for all of them. Yeah. That's so good.
You know, I was thinking too, if you get somebody who's like super political in your life, I think Ex Machina would be a good recommendation.
I really like
Yeah.
that. It's kind
I
of like
loved.
That's when I
Ex
still have to
Machina.
read.
it's also like really cinematic and it feels
Oh
like
my
maybe-
god, yeah, yeah, and apparently fucking what's his face is gonna be playing him in a movie. He's playing fucking Moon Knight.
Oscar Isaac?
Oscar Isaacs.
Oscar Isaac, yeah,
Isaac?
he's playing Mitchell 100. And the funny
That
thing
works.
is that they
God.
can't call the movie Ex Machina because he was in a movie called Ex Machina.
Oh man.
So I think they're just gonna call it The Great Machine, which
That
was
works.
like his name in the comic, like that was his superhero
I have-
name. But I love talking to people about Ex Machina. I was like, yeah, it's about a superhero, and he's really fucking bad at it. so he runs for office. And it's so good. And the ending, like, really fucking bothered me, but, like, in all of the right ways. And I won't get into it.
I've never finished Ex Machina. I think
Me neither.
I've read...
Girls.
Which trade, and maybe the first trade or the hardcover. I may have only read the first hardcover. I don't want to spoil it for people, but which trade ends with him stopping a certain event from happening?
That's like issue 1.
It's not issue 1. It's like issue 6.
No, dude, first issue.
I think, isn't that... Okay, so I've read at least the first hardcover.
All right, well, don't say any more because I need to read it. I've been telling Paul for our entire marriage that I was going to read this thing, and I haven't done it yet.
And The Wake.
And The Wake, but I need to do it.
There's what's another... Bone is a classic.
Oh, I loved Bone.
I never read Bone.
I was not as into Bone.
I read Bone when I worked at a gas station in 2011, and I just sat on a chair all day. And when Borders was going out of business, I was just buying a bunch of discounted
Rest in
trades.
peace.
Wow.
And Bone was on that stack.
Yeah. Bone was fun. If you like Tolkien, because it gets very Tolkien-y.
It does, but I personally am not like a fantasy Tolkien type person. But Bone, I don't know, eventually just kind of clicked with me.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's like a ripoff of Lord of the Rings, but you could tell there's like influence.
You know why I never got into Bone? Because I knew too much about the writer.
That'll do it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now that you bring that up.
Well, and because you came into the shop after he, like, the weird mini zine that he was doing. Well, it was his fan club doing the zine for him because he, like, shut himself off to the world. But he had a weird obsession with Sarah Michelle Gellar. It was a lot.
You were talking about that when I was working there.
It was a lot. No, because when you came in, we just had some of the old issues, but I remember when those were still coming out, like, monthly, and he had these, like, pages of just rambling about Sarah Michelle Gellar's performance as Buffy. Like, it was...
Yeah. You had, like, an online forum, too?
It was a lot. He had, like, this whole, like... Because he only communicated with the public through his fan club. It was fucking wacky.
Wow.
It was wacky. Yeah, so whenever people are like, oh, Dave Sim and, like, what's his face? Fucking Watchmen.
Oh, Alan Moore.
Alan Moore. And everyone's like, ooh. I couldn't with those guys. I just couldn't. I think that this Neil Gaiman is the only one out of that, like, kind of, like, popular crew of the early 90s that didn't turn out to be a total fucking sociopath.
And still makes quality work.
He still makes quality work. I think the most like, oh, I don't know, is he off the rails that he ever got was, like, fucking hooking up with what's her face when he left his wife for, what was that chick?
Oh yeah, what band was she in?
I don't know.
I thought she was in a band.
What was that girl's name?
I don't know.
I remember seeing her in a show. She did a show of All That Jazz
to the internet
in Cambridge, and she was the MC, and it got weird. It got so weird. And Amanda Palmer. That's what her name is. Amanda Palmer. Yeah, it got really weird.
Yeah.
Like, she was, like, her face was that, like, she did her makeup like Adolf Hitler, but, like, was in a silver dress, like, singing, like, a fucking, like, ballad. And I was like, what am I watching right now? Like, it got weird.
How did you do Adolf Hitler makeup?
I don't know. It was weird. It was weird. It was
Dresden Dolls.
The Dresden Dolls, yeah. It was like, I don't know. I think it was like 2009, 2010 or some shit.
That was
it was
Watchmen.
A wild
That's
time.
when Watchmen came out.
Huh?
That's when Watchmen came out.
That was a wild
Coincidence?
I think not.
Man, the early 2000s, the 20-aughts, that was a weird ass time.
Yeah.
Let's just be real.
Don't miss it.
I miss it.
No!
Take that back.
Those are my teenage
take that
years.
back right now.
I had good times there, you know?
I did not.
Ugh, yeah, same. I was like, ugh, yeah. But anywho.
Yeah, imagine, like, the expectations, like, for work ethic and stuff being the same as they are now, but with the racism and sexism and homophobia of, like... The 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
it's that's what it was like.
I'm not defending it as a straight white man.
It was not a good time for me.
I once again got to slide through with my easiness.
I feel like the only thing that came out of the 2000s that I still think is like amazing is like Destiny's Child and 112.
Nice. Peaches and cream.
Right? Right? I fucking love 112. They're great.
I got
I wanna
nothing. I'm like
taste it
Lord of
in
the
the morning
Rings, I
when I wake
guess.
This is what happens when you get me like drunk on a podcast.
Well, what have y'all been reading and watching?
I just saw the film Studio 666. It's been a while since I've been to the movies. I actually can't remember the last time I went. I think it was with you, maybe to see Spider-Man.
Probably.
So
We'll see Batman together, so we'll have that.
yeah, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing a Batman movie. I actually, you know what, I kind of am surprised by how much like kind of how much work I have to put into getting myself excited to go see that movie.
No, that doesn't surprise
I
me at
am
all.
personally,
think
I'm not excited. Like, I don't have that, like, I need to see it, I need to see it, I need to see it feeling I had
Yeah.
with so
Maybe
many
we
other
should
movies.
like put a pin in this and do like the Batman episode once we all like go and
Yeah,
see
'cause
it.
Yeah.
Have you seen it yet, Chandler?
I'm seeing it tomorrow.
Okay. So I say next week we do the Batman episode and we put a pin in this because
Yeah. I guess what I was trying to say was that I had the opportunity to go to the movies, and I was like, oh, do I do Studio 666 or Batman? And I went Studio 666. One, because, you know, not excited to see Batman. I mean, I'm excited, but you know what I mean. But also with the Foo
scared.
Fighters movie, it's also kind of like, I don't know how much longer it's going to be in theaters. You know, like, I feel like it's such a
and you know
niche,
I'm not
like-
gonna go to see it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I went to go see it, and it's a lot of fun, and it's really stupid, and it's exactly what I wanted it to be. You know, like I love that it's like a lot of practical horror effects. It has a lot of great supporting actors. Whitney Cummings, Will Forte. I love that fucking John Carpenter is in it.
Didn't he do part of the score for it?
Yeah, which is awesome. Like when because he does the opening credits, and it's so Carpenter, but with like a lot of guitar, and I am for it. So I knew he was doing part of the score. I didn't know he was going to be in it, and I loved that. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah, the effects are great. It definitely makes a lot of nods to other horror movies, like yeah, it was just a lot of fun. You could tell that most of them can't act, but one of them, this guy Pat Smear, he was like my favorite. I just thought he was so funny. So yes, that was a lot of fun. I'm trying to think about what else I've been checking out. I don't know why you're looking at me like that.
I don't know. I think I just like
I'm
my
like,
eyes
am I-
got really comfortable.
No,
so
it was
I'm
like, am I
sorry.
forgetting something?
No, my eyes just got really comfortable, and I'm sorry. That was a very intense moment.
No, that's okay. Yeah, but I think that's...
I saw The Last Duel. I finally saw The Last Duel, and contrary to what Ridley Scott says about millennials being the cause of that having a terrible box office open and whatever, I actually very much enjoyed it as a millennial. But I didn't know that movie existed because there was just not like
They didn't really promote it.
they didn't promote
I
it.
think
And if they were promoting it, it wasn't to my poor ass demographic. So I did see it though, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a very powerful movie, and I liked it a lot. I think that because I do love historical movies, and I like it that when they showcase historical concepts with like a more modern lens, and they did it in a way that was not like overhanded or heavy-handed, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. But yeah, just catching up on Joe versus Carol, and
Yeah. That's been fun.
and the Dead Files.
Yeah, Dead
Nice.
Files are back.
Ah,
Oh my god.
I love the Dead Files.
Steve DeShavi.
Oh my god, he's
is
the
like,
best.
He was like, well, what did he say? Like, oh, like she wanted to move,
Oh,
live
she-
in the middle of nowhere, and she did it. Mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished.
Everything he says, I just think is just fucking hilarious. Like he'll just be like, oof. Well, I wouldn't want to go out drinking with this guy.
Yeah,
You know,
like
just-
you're just like, did you do? Like somebody's talk, like describes a really like traumatic, like it was night. There were these people standing around my bed and looking down at me. I felt like they were touching me. And he's like, what's it, see some like shadows from outside or something?
Yeah, it's so funny.
It's really great comedic timing.
Yeah, but just also his like recommendations, like, listen, are you sure you weren't drinking? Was it so these people who were slamming your windows, like, was it your neighbor? Was it your grandmother? Like, it was
just narrowing it down.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And then he'll get like really tender when there's like a little kid that's like really, he's like, oh, you must be really scared. He's just like, I'm here. Nothing's gonna happen to you.
Yeah, it's really cute. It's really funny. He's like,
but then he turns around to a kid and like a 14-year-old being like, you doing any drugs?
Yeah.
You're not lying to me, are you?
Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, then all of the jars broke. Did you do it?
Did you break it? Were you having a moment?
Yeah. It's like, well, so these, I sure it wasn't people or maybe animals wearing people costumes. Like,
she didn't. Was it a car driving by?
I have a script outlined for those two. That
I love this show, and it is like the greatest thing. I will
write that spec script.
Yeah, you guys, seriously. I mean, we buy the seasons
on iTunes and like really download it as they come out. Zero fucks given. I don't regret it because I will watch them again.
We will rewatch them, and it's great every time.
It really
is. It's so good. So yeah, the Dead Files.
Some
guys,
of the people
get
are great.
On it.
Some of like the sassy clients.
Oh my god, the mullets.
Oh, she's dirty. Oh, she's dirty.
Yeah, no. This ghost, I guess, like this like gay guy and his mom were living in a house, and I guess the ghost hated their dogs, and she's like, yeah, she thinks they're dirty, and the gay guy's like, she's dirty.
It's like
you tell her.
Not gonna have some of that.
You guys
I'm gonna serve her a slice and shut the fuck up.
Like, you've been like recording this with us for how many years now? You need to watch this show because
we should do a Dead Files episode.
We should have a Dead Files podcast.
Just like send out gift baskets with the DVD box sets.
We should have a spin-off where it's just us talking about the Dead Files.
It's like yeah, each episode is us reviewing an episode.
Oh my god, yeah. This show is incredible.
I mean, it's got legs. You should do it.
It's great. It's great. So that's what we've been doing.
Yeah, so that's what we've been doing.
That's just making us happy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I farted.
So happy. It's okay.
So what's new with you?
I watched the Uncharted film with Tom Holland last week.
How is that?
It's a video game movie. It was, it was cheesy. It was campy. It was fun. It was cute. Okay. I liked it. That's all I have to say about it.
I almost also went to see that randomly because there was nothing else playing, but ended up just going home.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Damn.
Yeah, it's a serviceable film. I definitely recommend it. If you have your expectations set accordingly.
Did you clench your butthole when he was like falling out of the plane?
No. It's it's no spoilers, but yeah, but
it wasn't like butthole clenching like intense.
No, it was more funny than anything. It was like physical gags and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think as long as you have fun. I mean, I feel like there are certain movies you go into where like, okay, I'm not seeing Chris Nolan's Uncharted.
Right. No, it's just dumb fun. High octane. I think Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg have really good chemistry.
Oh, good. Yeah. It's kind of hard not to have good chemistry with Mark Wahlberg, I assume. He seems like just like one of those guys on set that you would just like.
I still can't believe he's from Dorchester.
No, I mean
Dorchester. Represent.
Tom Holland seems the same way. Tom Holland seems like he's a.
Like, how could I don't trust you. I feel like if it's like, oh, I couldn't get along with like I know fucking people who hung out with him on set. What is wrong with me?
Not a damn thing. You're beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should go to bed.
Well, Rob's got to do his.
Oh yeah. So I read a comic book. Shockingly, so I read Tom King's Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow run. It's 8 issues, and it's fucking incredible, is what it is.
Really?
Yes. So I don't know anything about Supergirl other than when she shows up in DC Comics. I'm like, that's Supergirl. But this arc is super detached from all of the DC universe. So already. Thumbs up from me. It basically starts Supergirl goes to a planet that has a red sun so she no longer has powers, so she can get drunk on her birthday. And while she's there, she encounters like a local girl whose dad was murdered and is about to like get vengeance on the guy, and then an adventure ensues. And it's just kind of like a universe globe-trotting adventure with Supergirl and this character Ruth, and it's about like trying to get revenge, but then, you know, Supergirl also being like in the background trying to like make this person a better person. And the art is really, really good. It's, I think all the art's done by Bill Quisevely.
I love a good
I don't know how to pronounce that
story.
name, but it is, the art's great, super colorful. The characters are great. It's great. Highly recommend.
Cool. Nice.
Sounds like it. All right.
Is that gonna be a book club?
Should
book?
be. It's only, it's 8
I'll
issues. It's
I'll
a
read it.
nice compact 8 issues. It's so good. What else?
And maybe when the trade comes out.
Yeah. The series, the last issue came out like 3 weeks ago, so the trade's probably not far behind.
All
Yeah.
right.
I watched West Side Story, the new Steven Spielberg film, based off of a play.
Mhm.
How did that go?
I loved it.
Really?
Nice.
Did you like the original?
I liked. So I was in the West Side Story play in 6th grade. I was a
Who'd you
jet,
play?
just a background jet.
Uh-huh.
After watching the movie, I was thinking back to my time in 6th grade, and I was like, there's only white people in my school, so there's just white people pretending to be Puerto Ricans. Like, that's kind of fucked up,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, well, you know.
again,
Natalie
the
Wood,
20-aughts, what are you
want?
going to do? But yeah, no, it's, if you like West Side Story or just musicals in
I do.
general, it's amazing. Like, it's
Okay, well, if it's not,
Steven's.
I'm fucking coming to you, and I'm gonna be like, "What the fuck is this shit?"
So
Rob?
it's Steven Spielberg just like directing the hell out of a movie that's also the West Side Story. So like the dance choreography and shit is incredible.
Okay, I have high expectations now because I haven't seen it because I was like, I don't need them to ruin.
No,
this shit
it is.
for me.
It's on
It is
Disney
on Disney Plus
soon,
and
isn't it?
HBO Max right now. It is
Alright.
great. The actress who plays Anita
Alright.
is incredible. She steals every.
Better than the original.
I haven't seen the original in like 15 years, so I can't.
The original Anita was incredible
Okay, well,
too.
She fucking kills it. She steals every scene she's in.
Okay.
It's real good. And then at the end of the movie, I was just like,
Alright.
oh yeah, the end of this is a super bummer.
Yeah, it's based on Romeo and
Yeah,
Juliet.
it's not like a happy ending, which I knew, but
Yeah.
it's real good. And I recommend West Side Story to those who enjoy musicals and or West Side Story. And then what else? I finally finished reading the last Expanse book. I've been putting it off for a while. It's just been sitting half read on my nightstand, but I finished it and it's over. And I'm sad because I loved those books. But
Was it a satisfying
was.
ending?
it all wrapped up well. Everybody, like, I don't know. It's a 9-book
sometimes
series,
those
so
guys
a
don't know
lot
how
of stuff
to-
happened, but it definitely like all came together in the end.
That's
And
good because sometimes they don't know how to end that series, or say end series in
but
general.
no, I mean, like it's one of those things where it's like it was a good ending, but you're still kind of disappointing just because it's over.
yeah.
Not the fact that they didn't wrap it up well, but yeah, I mean that was the first book series that I ever, and I just started reading it like a year and a half ago, but that like sucked me in, and I'm like, I need to read all of these, and then I read all 9 books in like a span of a year or so. But yeah, once again, if anybody likes sci-fi, it's the best. But now my
Yeah.
book reading has been opened up to a wider world of books. So I actually just bought, what is it called? On my lunch break, I discovered there was a bookstore near my work, so I bought a book from a bookstore. I know.
Wow.
Apparently Amazon's closing all of their brick and mortar bookstores that they opened. So hey,
Oh, good.
I've never been to
I
one.
didn't even know they.
yeah,
opened
they
brick-and-mortar
did. Now they're
stores.
I don't know. But yeah, so I picked up The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, which I hear is really good. Another sci-fi book.
Okay.
I'm a sucker for sci-fi, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
Cool.
That's it.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah, I'm down to do another like book club, like a book.
I'm down.
Yeah.
You know, like we did with Dark Tower. But yeah, later episode. Well, as always, gang, thank you for listening in. Y'all know the drill. Give us some love on iTunes. Give that sweet, sweet stars. We like constellations. And we're all very tired.
This episode was off the rails. But it was
fun.
It's a fun time.
Those are usually my favorite.
Yeah.
Always a good time.
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Have fun exploring the multiverse. Be safe.
Bye.